All right. Well, my guest today is Tahiera Monique Brown, and she is all about helping others, particularly survivors of domestic abuse. She has created a talk show, Living True and True Living, which looks at real people, real stories, and real issues. That said, Tahira's story is difficult to describe, except that it would make even the chillingest move, movie thriller cringe on its heels. Her story is more than her past, it's about the present and her future, which is where the production company Darkness to Light Films has birthed its name. She is also the author of Annihilator of Innocence and Hunger Pains in Our Heads. I cannot tell you how excited I am to have you here, Tahira.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. I look forward to this.
So your story really begins back in childhood.
Yeah.
Was there anyone there for you when you were younger?
When I was younger, people didn't really talk to you. Children were to be seen and not heard. And if there was discovery, family members talked among themselves. And if you're the child that is the victim, you hear this and excuse me, you think it's your fault. And I was 5 years old when I was first molested. And when you're that young, you don't understand what's happening to you. You don't understand what the person's done to you. All you know is you've been hurt. And no one describes to you the essence of this pain. So you're hearing other people pointing at you and saying, yes, he did that to her, and then they talk about it. But no one, but the one thing I do remember is my grandmother coming and patting me. And that was her way of comforting me. But I didn't understand, why this adult person would want to hurt me and why the adult persons didn't talk to me about it to make sure I could prepare myself if it ever happens again. And it did happen again. But I recognized the sign that it was coming. I was like, okay, this is going to happen to me again. But that one I did tell. I did tell someone.
So when did it stop? Like when were you able to get out of that situation?
Well, I'm gonna tell you, the people that has been the most vocal in my life and helping me has been men. It's my stepfather. He noticed I reacted to something one day that was said in the house, and he called me over and says, has someone touched you? Has someone messed with you? And I told him, and of course, everything went to excuse my French hell after that. And now I'm an older girl. I'm 11 or 12, and I'm watching them react, and I'm like, I'm just telling what happened to me, and because he asked me, and I was able to see that someone would fight for me. But since it was in the family, of course, you're the one that's being victimized by everyone else because everybody doesn't believe it happened to you. So you have to know in your heart and soul who you are. So I picked that moment to say, I know who I am. I know the truth, and I was in my heart thankful that my stepfather even inquired and tried to help to quench it, But at the end of the day, a child has to find their way through the avenues of opinions of people. Because once it comes out, just because you're a child, I don't think people are going to be merciful. No, they're not.
True that.
Mm-hmm.
So many of us can relate to how our past experiences can play in our adult choices. And I know for me, particularly, if you didn't see, I mean, it's not my parents were together for till the end,
Right.
but it didn't feel like a very happy relationship. Sometimes they did things together, sometimes, but it was like they fought like tooth and nail. But that impacted how I chose men in my life too at that time until I healed from that. But how did that impact you choosing your first husband all that stuff you went through?
Well, I didn't choose my first husband. That was like a conversation between my mom and him. And
Oh,
I was angry about that. I was angry that I could not make a choice on, whether I wanted to be in a marriage or not. And it was even throughout my whole marriage and the time that my mother was alive, it was like if there was an issue, he would go to her and she would back him. And I'm still in the same situation. I'm still in the same boat. Even though other family members saw the domestic violence, saw the abuse, it was what I would say, it seemed almost like a normal thing. It's when you married, you stayed in the marriage, no matter what. But I didn't believe that. So I was constantly trying to find a way out of that marriage. And I didn't want my children to be raised up seeing me get beaten and all that. So I finally worked on getting a divorce. But even through the divorce proceedings, the judge says, you got to stay with them this amount of time
mm,
to see if you're really going to leave. At that time, now you're being more victimized because now you got the justice system saying we're on the side of the man. And so, you're being even more, it's like it was ramped up a bit. Now, I'm going to make this clear. Uh, Over time, my children's father and I, we became friends. And my children's father and my husband I'm married to now are excellent friends. They're great friends. They're almost like brothers. And that's a beautiful thing to have happen, but it happened over a period of time.
mm.
But at the end of the day, there can be some grace, but sometimes you're just not supposed to be behind closed doors together. And I fought not to be behind closed doors with someone that was going to beat me. Of course, we're going to talk about the next situation later, but yeah, but
Yeah.
I fought my way out. I took the abuse out and I meant to stay out.
Wow. How long was it after that when the unthinkable happened?
It was several years because, like, my children's father was back and forth. And I'm gonna tell you, always the women don't always make the decision to go back with a man. A man just moves in on her, and you don't have a system to help you fight. Or those his kids, and you're like, I got a new house on my own. He wasn't there, but then you got to fight again to try to get him out. So that was kind of the back and forth situation. But once I knew that it was over, and I thought it was over, I think about a year later is when I realized, a stalker had been stalking me on my job. And that was a short time that I noticed that he was stalking me, but he had been stalking me for months, and only God knows how long that had been. And then he began his attack on me on my job. And when I left my job, and I don't want to go into that too deep right now, I want to focus on the domestic violence situation. And one of the things I know we talked earlier was about, you look at somebody's lifestyle and say, oh, well, they ended up in a domestic violence situation because they didn't have a good
Mm.
household, blah, blah, blah. That's not true. Sometimes children are raised up in a beautiful, loving relationships. They tell themselves, when I get married, I want to marry somebody just like my dad. I want to marry somebody just like my mom. And you meet a guy or you meet a woman, and they have you have told them everything you want, so they mimic it. So when you finally get behind closed doors, next thing you know, I don't know this person. This person is a complete stranger to me. And now you're being abused, and your family may not really know how to help pull you out, or you may have shame of letting them know you're being abused, letting your friends know you're being abused. So sometimes by the time the bruises start showing up, they start giving excuses. Oh, I hit my head against the wall, or oh, I fell down the stairs, or oh, I this and that. And a lot of them end up in the grave before the real truth comes out because they're ashamed to let this loving family relationships they left in the past know the hell that they're catching in their future, in their
Mm.
lives. So I
And
don't
it's like
think,
that's
I
the most
think
dangerous time.
psychologically, yeah, I think psychologically people want to express that because it
Yeah.
seems to be the majority, but there are some people that come from loving relationships that ends up in hell. And it's not their fault that they end up in hell, but they don't know what to look for. And people are actors. They act from the moment they get up to the moment they go to bed. So if you're caught in the middle of a fantastic actor that knows just how to act around your friends, knows just how to act around your family, but at home he's telling you, you better not tell anybody. If you tell anybody, I'm gonna kill you. He's a pillar of society. He's a pastor, or he's a politician, or whatever, a police officer. But you're getting the same person that you want to look at to help you is the same person that's abusing you behind closed doors. Tell me, how do you go about letting someone know what you're dealing with, and they
Yeah.
listen to you the first time? Because sometimes you don't have a second time. When I reached out and I let my sister know that there was danger, I told her I don't have time to tell you a long story. All I know, if anything happens to me, take my children. That's all I asked. Take my children, did anything happen to me? Because I knew to get out of that hostage situation, I may not make it.
Wow. And so did the people around you, I mean, you were still going to work. I mean, that's the other thing about domestic abuse. You are living a normal life. It's people don't
As
know
normal
what's
as you
going
can,
on.
even as a hostage.
So did people know him, or did your family know this man? Like, or did he act
My
like your
children,
husband?
this guy that took me as a hostage forced me to marry him at the Jeff Fulton County Courthouse in Atlanta. And people were saying, why is that old man with that young lady? And he was wearing a collar, a pastor's collar. Did he mimic a pastor? They just let him go by, and he had weapons. And they let him go on down past the weapon stalls to the justice of the peace. And the justice of the peace says, all your paperwork isn't here. So he promised we'll get the paperwork to you. And the man married us. Manipulation. They're master manipulators. So
Yes,
there are some just cold-blooded, going to do what they're going to do, but some get a bigger joy out of manipulating people and tricking people and making people feel like they're the best thing to slice bread. But once they ever discover that you met the worst enemy of your life,
true.
the table will flip.
And the thing that drives me insane, and I once wrote an op-ed about this, the blame the victim, and it was more difficult back in the 80s
Oh,
and 70s. I mean, the laws just weren't there. The battered women's syndrome law only came in what, early 90s or something like
yes,
that.
yes.
Um,
And I was when my situation took place, the lawyer that represented my case, J. Tom Morgan, was all about ending domestic violence and victimization. And I lucked up on having this lawyer represent my child when we was going through the crisis. And the first crisis was the hostage for 2 years. Then the next crisis was court case, going through that for 2 more years, watching my daughter go through being on the stand for 2 years. But J. Tom Morgan's whole calling at that time was to bring attention to children being able to testify, because the court system can be brutal on kids. And for my daughter to have endured that, it's unthinkable to imagine that a child could be on a stand day after day against a perpetrator, looking that perpetrator in the eye and testify.
wow, very traumatic.
Very, very much so.
So I used to describe, I mean, every situation, and I'm sure there's some similarities. I mean, we see them portrayed in the movies as well,
Mhm.
where one wrong move, the toast is not perfect, or one thing sets them off. They could be silent. The kids are silent. If they drop something, they just like freak out.
Yeah.
I kind of liken that. I try to describe that to people on how that that enveloping fear and what that's like. It's like walking in a Vietnam forest during the war, and you're sifting through that elephant grass. You can't see the enemy on either side of you. You don't know where they are, but you know they're out there. And one wrong move, you can step on a landmine or somebody can shoot you. That's how I feel is a good description of domestic abuse. What would you add to that?
Well, domestic abuse is just like when I was a hostage. You're a hostage behind your own closed doors with someone that says they love you. And, I always tell people the hardest people to save are the ones that are in love, that love their abusers. And the more you go in and try to save them, not only are you trying to save them, but they are also trying to save their abusers. And sometimes that's more than one way. It's because their abusers are the ones that pay the bills. They lose their home. Their kids might be taken from them. There's a whole lot of things, a lot of fear that's been built up over time that person is trying to save themselves and their children and their home and their lifestyle. Sometimes it's a lifestyle they've gotten used to. They can't imagine leaving someone and now probably being on the street, and losing all that ambience that came with that name. Or even the poorest of the poorest people. You see people love, living on a tent under a bridge, living on fear of leaving that person, no matter how dire it is.
Yeah.
So I'm not, I try to look at this full circle and not try to call out any particular reason why a person became a victim, because that do set up people to be saying, oh, that person's not a victim because she's living in $1 million house, she's driving a Lamborghini, or he's this and that and the other. But at the end of the day, when they're standing over the grave, they're saying, I wished I'd done something. I wished I'd
Right.
given her a voice or him a voice, because women kill too.
Mm.
So, I wished I had given him or her a voice so that they could have talked to someone. Maybe we could have helped. But it's a little too late to help when a person is no longer here with you.
It is. Usually, when you leave or you try to leave, that is the most dangerous moment.
Not
There
only
is,
for the victim, but also the victim's friends and family,
yeah,
because the victimizer try to make sure he knows everybody you love and close to. So, the victim is caught up between a rock and a hard place of not only trying to protect themselves, protect their children inside the house, but to protect their mom and dad, protect their best friends. And this is another thing I dealt with as a hostage, is people coming in, and even when as a domestic violence survivor, is people coming inside your house and saying their 2 cents and leaving. If you hit her, if you do this to her or him, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna do this. But you're leaving them there with them saying, bam, this is for them saying that, bam, this is for them saying, you're sitting there like, please just leave my house, just
yeah,
get out, because you're making it worse for me, because you're going home. You're going home to your security and you're leaving me with this person you just threatened, you know, and they looking at you like, I'm sitting here with a gun behind my back. You too stupid to know that. So they're laughing in their heart, in their mind, about you standing in that doorway, talking about what you're going to come back and do. And sometimes the interference of others just makes it more dangerous for a victim. If you're not going in to take that victim out, and take them to a secure place, don't stand there in that house, because they don't have time to argue a case with you. They don't have time to explain. Sometimes when a victim comes and say, I need help, they don't have time to explain a story to you. They just want you to know they need help. Will you be there for them? And sometimes when you do go and ask for help, a person want to know, well, why you say that, and why you come this, and I don't think he'll do that to you, and I don't think that, and you're saying all I'm asking for is help. But do you remember now, a lot of times a victim want to leave a victimizer. Your own family might love the victimizer.
mm,
And because they think he's
true
the
that.
greatest thing to slice bread. And so how do you go to mom and dad and say, I need help from someone they love?
Yeah,
And the guy's acting all sweet to them, taking them out bowling and going to football games and everything like that. So a victim situations are different in so many ways, until it's very hard to look inside that book and know how to save them, unless they realize that there is someone on the other side that will really help them.
and there's the other aspect too, where people will complain about, well, why does she keep going back to him? Well, fear is the
Absolutely.
motivating factor.
Well, there's fear, and like I said, the other thing is love. And I think
Mm,
love is the most dangerous. But fear, yes. But love is the most dangerous, because they're going to keep going back. It doesn't take much for that victimizer to say, come back to me, baby. You know I love you. And you'll see her or him packing up and going back, or sneaking out and going back. And you're doing the best you can to save them. Even if you see the danger. Uh, I always say that the hardest person to save is that person that's in love with the victimizer. And I mean in love,
yeah,
where they'll take anything and everything off of that person. And you probably, it's going to be very difficult to save them. They can be saved, but it's very difficult.
yeah, yeah. It's like a cult. It's like getting
Absolutely.
somebody out of a cult.
Yes. Yes. And who can say what love is? Love is if love was simple, we wouldn't have libraries all over the world trying to describe love. If hate was simple, we would have books all over the library with hate and love running on the same line. And then right in between all that is fear and trepidation, wars, and everything else over those two words. So I always tell people, look at the situation where you're trying to help people, and try not to put yourself in too deep, because you don't want this victimizer coming after you, knocking on your door and burying you, because you're trying to take something from them, that this is their possession and you are their
Mm,
possession. And if you're a woman
it's
or a
true.
guy with children with someone that's very narcissistic, and they see you as their possession, a psychotic, or whatever you want to call it, whatever name therapists want to give it, if you're if their possession, you're their possession and they're coming after you.
So, who was your North Star through all this?
I was watching a show with Oprah Winfrey, and there was a guy on there that was in this interview, and he said, you know, victimizers are annihilators of innocence, and that's where my name of my book actually came from. But also, he was also talking about people being on the other side that will help you. And the victimizer that was holding me hostage was actually watching that show with me, and I could see the fear on his face, like, who gonna be there to help you? And I could see, I could read him. And from that moment on, I started just thinking and dreaming and visualizing myself out of my situation. I did not know how I was going to get out, but the choice I made to save my children, I almost lost my life. I ended up in a coma. I have what I call get lost gas syndrome because I have amnesia from that choice. And I live with that. I call it reverse Alzheimer's because I'm constantly learning things. But my children had to face the court system, and the person that became my saving grace was a nurse that tended to me in the ICU unit. And the doctor that was there went and pulled my daughter and separated her from the victimizer. My daughter's mind was on my son because he was still with him. But it began with her being tested that she'd been raped as well. And the rape trial began around the child. Then they brought in all the weapons and all the hostage stuff. But the person that I was saving grace and stuck with it and stayed with us, and we're friends to this day, was our attorney, J. Tom Morgan. He was the pillar. He was the pillar, and his team, when I was in the hospital recovering from the coma, they was taking my kids back and forth to court, setting up the trial. The catalyst was the nurse, the doctor, and then the detectives that came into the hospital setting up a case, because they got to build a case. No matter how dire it is, they got to build a case to even arrest him.
Mm. Yeah.
But my biggest saving grace was the most innocent person in the room was my brother James. My brother James asked my daughter, "What happened? You need to tell me what happened." But my perpetrator thought he would be the last person to do anything to save us, because every one of them, they think there's a weak link, and my brother was considered the weak link.
Ah, wow. And he was the strongest link.
Well, the victim has to do something. They have to do something. It's not going to work if you don't do anything. Unfortunately, the victim has to do something. And the last thing you think is your children have to continue to fight if you die.
So how has your current husband helped with your healing?
Well, it's very difficult for someone it took years for him to really understand the amnesia and understand the correlations between just little things that he would do out of love, that the perpetrator would do out of control, that I have to recognize the difference between when he would, he had to be very careful around me. Like he knows now, don't just walk in the house. He always let me know, "Babe, I'm coming in the house." Or, he had to learn little things that would cause me to shut down. It was uncontrollable. And so talking him through years of being a partner and an understanding, and I tried to push him away, not only because my children, what they've been through, but I had my special needs sister that was, that at the time was, diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. I had special needs that was left behind from my parents. I was having her with me. I didn't want to bring a man into all of my pain. And he was saying, "I'm not going anywhere. I'm here for the long haul. I'm here to love you." And my kids picked him. My special needs child picked him. My dog picked him. And my ex picked him. My ex-family picked him. I was like, what is it with you do? What did they see? And he's proven himself to be justifiable. And he's wonderful. He's a Christian. He's a dream. Nobody's perfect. I have to put him across my knee every now and then. But he's not fussy. He's not, I'm the one that's the fussy one in the relationship. He's patient. And, I tell people when they meet my husband out that he's the same person behind closed doors. There are no surprises.
So what made you choose a film company for your career?
I had been speaking, I started out in film in Atlanta right after, even while I was a hostage. We was on a movie called kids like these time daily, and the perpetrator was sitting behind her. On that set, he had a gun the whole time to control me. But even as a hostage, I was on movie sets, and then after that, an agent Devoort saw me, and she said to her at that time, Barbara, at that time, she says, "I have a film that's coming up, RoboCop 3, and then also In the Heat of the Night was starting, and she wanted ethnic talent." And I thought she meant people from where I was. So I was bringing up people from where I was. And so we started working together. I started assisting her as assistant casting director. And then when I moved, and then I started my own talent agency called Talent Express. Talent Express with talent personnel. So I started a talent company in Atlanta on my own with a group of people that got me roundabout. So Amnesia was no excuse to not sign independence. And so I started I started my own company in Atlanta, talent agency. And then I came to Birmingham. That was nothing. So I ended up writing Annihilator of Innocence, my book. And I ended up traveling around the country as a speaker on the radios and everything like that. And I was everywhere. And then I was like, oh wait, I told my husband, I said, I know film. This is what I want to do. I want to tell people stories in my talk show. And I started out with Living True and Truly Living, where real people tell real stories about real issues. And my first interviewee was a young lady by Jan Reed, Jan Kavan Reed, that I talked about her son who was murdered by his best friend. And then on after that, I kept doing stories for a while. So as my child got worse, I, focused on the movie, The Prayer. And when she died, I just had to, then COVID hit. So right now still in development on doing the movie, The Prayer. And I'll be meeting with my crew coming up very soon to get us back moving again with doing The Prayer, the movie.
Yeah, COVID has certainly impacted the film and theater industry a lot.
But it also has opened doors for other people, many other people that's been trying to get films in. Because don't get me started, that's a whole nother subject. But but it really opens your eyes on many different ways now that you can do film and television and radio and blah, blah, blah. There's so many apps and things now people are using. There's blogging, there's this and that and dithers of things I can't remember the name of. But yeah, there's so many ways now that you can tell your story if you want to tell your own story and bring it to life to someone, And one of the things I try to do with my story and with my book, Annihilator of Innocence, it can still be gotten on Amazon, is try to tell people the truth. And anything they research on this, they'll find out this book is the absolute truth. But it's also Christian driven because I believe in the power of prayer, and I believe that God doesn't make mistakes. That all I've been through, there has to be an answer. And I think a lot of people want to get blessings. They want to be blessed, but they don't want to go through the fire. They want to say, look, don't just keep the fire over there. I don't want to go through any trials. I just want the blessed, just give me the car, give me the house, but they don't want to go through any trials and tribulations to get a blessing.
Yeah, and choosing the film industry I mean, I've worked in media, so it's not an easy place to be. You're always even if you have your own company, even if you're successful, you're still perpetually unemployed, really, because you're always looking for new work.
Oh, let me tell you some stories about that as well. But but to be in media, whether it's in film or radio, television, whether you're playing out there being an MC for different things that's happening out there, football games, baseball games, you get it's an internal part of you because you're an artist. So if you're an artist and you're a creative person, you always found another way to use that creative ability. Some people put it in a trunk and forget about it. But me now, I've written over the years so many books that I'm trying to get out, little at a time. Because, when you've been locked away and having to live your life for someone else, you can still be creative. It may not hit the airways. It may not, be out there and be big. You may not live in the mansion. You may not drive to fine cars, but you out there doing what you love to do. And that's what I kept doing. Is what I love to do. I love to write. I love to speak, and I love to entertain people, So in little ways, I was able to help people do what their dreams are while I could not live to do mine. So I would have little meetings in my house, little minuet, little teaching classes where it's one-on-one, maybe 4 at a time. And I would teach people about the industry that I love so much so that they can go out there and reap the rewards. And I can sit back and know that I've given these people good advice. They have become successful. And I'm not asking them to look back at me and say, oh, Tahiera Monique Brown, da, 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 da. No, I want them to just go. Once I teach them, just go and do and be the success that God wished you to be. He'll bring me along in my right time.
Awesome. So, of all the people you've talked to and all the interviews that you've done, is there anything you would like the others to know about you that you have not been asked yet?
Well, I think the biggest question that I think no one's asked me about was how do I live with amnesia and how do I function? One of the things I'm surrounded by is by people that love me. When I first got out of the hospital, there was several guys that, got to know me and wanted to be in the film industry. So I would get on my sets and I'd do my work, but I would get lost, all the time. I call it, and I still live with that. And being surrounded by people that love me in spite of me, and people that learn that I have the condition, embrace me and don't push me away. I've had some people, mistreat me and try to test my abilities. But, at the end of the day, God gave me these abilities. These abilities didn't come from any class or anything like that. They came from real life trials and struggles and being on real live film sets, things I've learned in the movie industry, wanting to learn and embrace the knowledge that I needed to have. And, I learned forward. And what I don't remember in my past, I used to struggle to try to remember, but I realized one of the therapists that worked with me in the hospital says, think forward, think life forward. And anything that needs to come along with that will come along with that. And that has been true. Is I think life forward. And I even tell people now, think life forward. And that's the thing that a lot of people have a harder time asking me about is, how do you live with amnesia? Well, I live with it. I live with an affliction that no one can see. I've had friends that are shot, friends that are burned, some that are in wheelchairs. But when we all come together, we're all in the same house together, learning to live with the defects of life as some people see it. But I see it as power, that in spite of all that we look like to others, we are powerful individuals, and we are better than people think. I am the nobody to help other nobodies become somebody special. And when you don't insult me by telling me I ain't worth nothing, you ain't nobody, you'll never amount to anything, I'm more than that. I'm a child of God.
Nice. Oh God. You can't end on a better note. Thank you so much for this
You're
interview.
welcome.
It was everything I expected it. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. I hope I helped somebody today.
I hope so too.